let's just ignore that and crawl in.
Hi.
Hello, folks.
It says we're live.
It says we're live, but actually in the middle of the phone it says can't start live video. The broadcast has already ended. So we don't know if this is going through. It's me, Mr. Taylor, with my good friend Lady Croissant, all the way from France for today's Read Aloud.
I'm not from France, I just pretend like it.
Oh, just like I pretend to be a superstar.
Well,
So
you kind of are.
if somebody could let us know if we're live, I think I just heard a Facebook ping. I don't know if we're live.
Yep, we're alive because there's one viewer.
We have one viewer. We're going viral. Let's see if we have a comment. I'm going.
Up 2 viewers, one and more.
It still tells us we're not live.
Let's see. Yep, I think we're live.
All right, we have Cole. Coca-Cola is watching at home. Can you say something to see if you can hear us?
Yeah.
We have some technical.
Aww.
Oh, Mrs. Massey says we're live. I think she meant to say we're live, or maybe she did mean to say we're live. All right. Can you believe it or not? Actually, this school year, Miss Croissant, I haven't even told the kids at home this. We only. Hi, Cole. We see you. Thank you. It still tells us that we're not live, but we're going to go on with the story.
Yeah.
This is your second to last read aloud. And our story this week is NORA'S ARK by Natalie Kinsey Warnock, and it's illustrated by Emily Arnold and McCauley. If you have your story at home, you can follow along. If you don't have your story, you can listen to me and La French lady read this. Our genre, you want to give them our genre, Miss Croissant?
Yes.
What's our genre?
Okay. Historical fiction.
Historical fiction. So it's a made-up story, but it takes place in a real place in history. It's kind of a little bit of a longer story, so
Yeah.
that's why I hired some help this time. NORA'S ARK. You want to do every other paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Want me to start?
You can start.
Okay. When I was born, Grandma said I was so small I looked like a little bird. That's why I was named Wren. Grandma may look small too, but she's made of granite, and she says I'm tough, just like she is. Good thing, or we never would have survived the 1927 flood. Now, before Miss Croissant goes on, I just wanted to remind the folks at home that had we been alive back in 1927, we would have known how to survive that flood because we had that very important flood safety drill on April 1st, if y'all remember. There you go. All right.
Grandma and Grandpa lived in a little farm by the river, Vermont. They did not have much money, but there was always plenty to eat. Milk from Grandpa's cows, vegetables from Grandma's garden, apples and plums from the orchard, fish from the river, and maple syrup that Grandma and Grandpa made each spring.
Ding! Thank you. Now I'll do this page and you do this page.
Okay.
Grandpa was building Grandma a new house. It sat on a hill, and when finished, it would have electricity, a wringer, washing machine, just kidding, a wringer washing machine, and best of all, an indoor bathroom. I don't need a new house, Horace, Grandma said. We've lived here for 40 years, raised 8 children, and been as happy as a family could be. That new house is just gravy.
Yay!
What do you mean? I asked her. Grandma thought how she could explain it to me. You like potatoes, don't you, Wren?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, I told her. Grandma made the best mashed potatoes in the world, with lots of milk, butter, and pepper in them. You could make a meal out of just her potatoes. You like gravy on them? I reckon. Grandma did make good gravy, but your potatoes taste good without gravy too, I told her.
Exactly, Grandma said. Gravy tastes good, but you don't need it. And I don't need that new house. I like living here. But Grandpa kept right on building.
Ding! When it began to rain on November 2nd, 1927, no one along the river had any idea 9 inches of rain would fall in 2 days. Miss Croissant, how many inches of rain was that?
9.
Smell that test question.
Niner.
Niner. Life in Vermont was about to change forever. The rain came down in torrents. It drummed so loudly on the roof we couldn't talk. Grandma spent the morning baking bread. By noon, she'd made 27 loaves. "Grandma, why'd you make so much bread?" I shouted. Grandma watched the water stream down the windows. "We might..."
Hi, Atticus.
Hi, Atticus. The French lady saw it. Sorry, I lost my spot. "We might need it," she said, but I couldn't imagine how he'd eat 27 loaves of bread. When Grandpa came in for lunch, he poured a quart of water out of each boot. "I've never seen the river rise so fast," he said. "I think we'd best get up to the new house." For once, Grandma didn't argue. By the time she'd packed quilts, candles, her photo albums, and a sack of potatoes, the water was up to the porch. Grandpa let all the cows and horses out of the barn.
What will happen to them? I asked. They'll get to higher ground and be all right, he said. Don't worry, Wren, but I can tell he was one who was worried. I loaded all those loaves of bread into my old baby carriage, covered it with oilcloth, and pushed it through the mud and rain to the new house. Guess I built this place just in time, Grandpa said. If I don't know better, I think you'd cause this flood just so I'd have to move into the new house, Grandma said. But she seemed glad to be on higher ground too. We'd scarcely set foot inside when we heard pounding on the door.
The three Guthrie boys stood on the porch, burlap bags in each hand. The bags squirmed and squawked. "Our barn's flooded. Can we keep the chickens here?" They emptied the chickens onto the kitchen floor. "Some of our heifers are stranded in the fields," one of the boys said. "We're going to see if we can push them to higher ground." "I'll go with you," Grandpa said. "May I go too?" I asked. "No," Grandpa and Grandma both said at once. "Be careful," Grandma told him, and he and the boys disappeared through the rain. Even with all those chickens, the house seemed empty with Grandpa gone. Grandma saw me shiver and wrapped a quilt around me. It's getting colder," she said. "I wish I had my cook stove here." She held me close as we stood watching the rain. "I wish Grandpa would come back," I said. "Me too," said Grandma.
Ding. We both shrieked when a huge head appeared in the window. It was Major, one of the Ferguson's horses. I was even more astonished when Grandma opened the door and let him in. "You're bringing Major into the house. We don't have a stove," Grandma said. "He's big. He'll add heat to the place." Major took up half of the kitchen. The other half was taken up by loaves of bread and chickens. We had chickens in the cupboards, chickens on the shelves, and in the baby carriage, even chickens roosting on Major's back.
Good job. And Miss Croissant just told us that the reason that they brought the horse into the house was because they didn't have a stove and he was big and he would add heat. Do you think that's a good test question?
Yeah.
Good test question. Thanks, Cole. Lerv. Our next visitors were Mrs. Lafleur and her daughter, Madeline. Mrs. Lafleur didn't speak much English. I can't really do a French accent here. "Our house wash away," Mrs. Lafleur said. "We row boat here." Madeline looked around the kitchen and her eyes opened wide. Spoiler alert, disclaimer, I don't speak French, so this is my best. "Des poulets dans la charrette de bébé," she said. I guess she'd never seen chickens in a baby carriage before. Bye, Avery. See you tomorrow. We're on page 552, paragraph number what?
51.
51.
By nightfall, the house was full to bursting. Besides Mrs. Lafleur and Madeline, Mr. and Mrs. Guthrie, the Fergusons, and the Craigs, family had moved in. 23 people in all. There were also 3 horses and a cow, 5 pigs, a duck, 4 cats, and 100 chickens.
How many people? 23.
23.
How many chickens?
100.
100. Possible test question. Paragraph 52. The river rose until the house became an island, and we watched our neighbors' houses wash down the river. Ding! It's a pretty sad part. Okay, I'll go back to this side and you do this side, okay?
Okay.
Mr. and Mrs. Guthrie had brought a side of salt pork with them, though we had no way to cook it. The Fergusons had saved their radio, a skillet, a bag of dried apples, and a 3-legged cat. I love my kitty cat, yes I do.
I love a kitty cat, yes I do.
They were delighted to find Major alive and well, and in our kitchen. Paragraph number?
54.
Yay. The Craigs had lost everything but the clothes on their backs. We're just glad we all got out alive, Mrs. Craig said, which only reminded Grandma and me that Grandpa had still not returned. We had bread and dried apples for supper, and rainwater Madeline and I scooped out of the LaFleur's rowboat. The water had a few fish scales in it, but no one complained.
With no stove or beds, we all huddled together for warmth, sharing Grandma's quilts as best as we could. We sang Scottish songs and row, row, row your boat in a round, and Mrs.
LaFleur.
taught us
À la Clairefontaine.
a la a tune that brought tears into our eyes, even though we couldn't understand the words. Miss Guthrie told how her grandfather had fought the
Gettysburg.
And Mr. Craig kept us laughing with stories of his boyhood days in logging camp in Maine. If it hadn't been for the thought of Grandpa out there somewhere, it would have almost seemed like a party.
Good job. Oh, looks like Pip has joined us. Atticus Lerves. All right. I knew Grandma was worried about Grandpa. I was worried too. He should have been home by now. I wanted to ask Peter Ferguson if he would come with me to look for Grandpa, but I knew if Grandma overheard, she'd forbid me to go. So when the sky was getting light, I sneaked out and sprinted for the rowboat. Grandma was just getting into it. What are you doing here? She wanted to know. Same as you, I reckon. Going to look for Grandpa. It's too dangerous, and that's a vocab word this week, Granny said. It's too dangerous. Go back to the house. But I shook my head. Grandma looked at me hard. All right, she said. We'll look for him together. I pushed us off into water that was full of furniture and trees and dead animals. Grandma had to be careful where she rowed. It was raining so hard, I had to keep bailing water out of the boat.
Nothing looked the same. Fields have become lakes. Just the roofs of houses stuck up above the water. One of the roofs, we saw a dog. Why, I believe that's Sam
Burrows?
Burrows Collie's grandma said. And she rode toward the house. The collie barked when she saw us coming. I held the roof and steady the boat. Come on, girl, I said. And the dog jumped into the boat beside me. She whined and licked my face. The strangest sight was yet to come. We rode and bent in the river, and I squinted, sure that my eyes were fooling me. Then I heard Grandma's voice behind me. Wren, are those old eyes failing me, or is that a cow in a tree? Grandma asked.
Do you think you can do that in a grandma voice? See if you can pull it out.
Run. I cannot. Okay. Are these old eyes failing me, or is that a cow in a tree? I cannot do that.
That was good. Good job. Look right here. Just a minute ago. Oh, look what Attica said.
Heather.
That's his mom. See right there, though.
Hi, Madison.
Who's Madison? I'm here with Lady Croissant.
This is Croissant, not Madison.
It was indeed. A red and white Ayrshire was wedged into the crook formed by two branches, and she was bawling piteously, vocab word. Higher up in the branches was a man. He was hollering almost as loudly as the cow. I believe we found your grandpa, Grandma said. Relief, another vocab word, flooding her face. Is that a play on words that relief was flooding her face as they were going through a flood? I was on my way home when I got swept away by the water, Grandpa said. I thought I was a goner too, but then this cow floated by. I grabbed her tail and stayed afloat until she got hung up in this tree. We pushed and pulled on that cow, but she was stuck fast and we finally had to leave her. Grandpa promised he'd come back and try to cut her free, but he was crying as we rode away. Goodness, Grandma said. All that fuss over a cow? But Grandpa wasn't crying over just one cow. All our cows drowned, Nora, he said. The house, the barn, the horses, they're all gone.
Grandma wiped the tears from his eyes. You're safe. I cannot do
That's
that.
okay.
You're safe, and that's all that matters, she said. We'll have to start over, Grandpa said. And Grandma smiled. We can do that, she said. Grandpa smiled back at her. And I knew that no matter what, everything would be all right. The
Craigs? Fergusons?
Guthrie's, and
Lefleurs.
Lefleurs were glad to see Madeline even hugged me. She was afraid of you. You drowned, Peter said. He blushed. I was too, he added. When Grandpa saw all the animals in the kitchen, he burst out laughing. Nora, I thought I was building you a house, but I see it was really an ark.
It took 3 days for the water to go down enough so our neighbors could see what was left of their farms. Grandpa put his arm around Grandma. I'll finish this house the way you want it, Nora, he said. But he shook his head when the Fergusons led Major out. I don't know as I'll ever be able to get those hoof prints out of this floor, he said.
I've now lived in my grandparents' house for more than 40 years, and those
hoof prints
are still in the floor. I never sanded them out because they remind me of what's important. Family and friends and neighbors helping neighbors. Like Grandma said.
Everything else is just gravy. Oh, you're getting some compliments.
Hi, Madison. You're doing good. Thank you.
Pip says.
Hi, Matthew. Hi, Paige.
Attica says.
Hi, Jimmy.
That's me. I'm Jimmy. Hi, Atticus.
Doing good, Matthew. Thank you.
Oh, man. That story was a lot more fun reading it with someone than if I had to read it by myself. Thanks, Mad Croissant. Mad Croissant.
You almost called me Matthew.
Thanks for joining us. It still says that it can't start our live video, so thank you, everybody, for we love you. It still says our video's not working, but apparently
It is.
it is, because you're all there. I hope it saves this video now so we can put it on the YouTube and send it out to the fine folks at home in the land of Seesaw.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us for Nora's Ark. And if it starts to rain, you know where to go. Roll up your jeans and get on your desk. Thanks for watching. Flood safety. And now it won't let us finish. Hi. Okay, I'm just going to click OK, and hopefully it will end the video for us.